The Idries Shah Foundation podcast. Practical psychology for today. Featuring the works of Idries Shah, narrated by David Ault. Welcome to the Idries Shah Foundation podcast. On this edition of the podcast, we will hear selections from the Idries Shah Anthology. 1. On Sufism. Sufism is truth without form. Ibn al-Jalali. From The Way of the Sufi. Becoming what one can become. To be a Sufi is to become what you can become, and not to try to pursue what is, at the wrong stage, illusion. It is to become aware of what is possible to you, and not to think that you are aware of that of which you are heedless. Sufism is the science of stilling what has to be stilled, and alerting what can be alerted, not thinking that you can still or alert where you cannot, or that you need to do so when you do not need it. The following of the dervish path is pursuing a concealed unity, in spite of, and not by means of, the claims of diversity. It is taking into account the means which are presented in diversity, without thinking that the externals of diversity are important in themselves. It is approached by studying the factors of learning how to learn, not by trying to gain knowledge without correct practice in approaching it. You come closer to being a Sufi through realizing that habit and preconception are essentials only in some studies, not by forming habits and judging by means of unsuitable preconceptions. You must become as aware of insignificance as you think you are of significance, not seeking feelings of significance alone. The humble are so because they must be so. The worst of all men or women are those who practice humility for the purpose of pride, not as a means of travel. The method of Sufism is, as it always has been, to adopt that which is of value, when and where it is of value, and with whom it is of value, not to imitate because of awe, or to copy because of imitativeness. The success of man in raising himself higher comes through the right effort and the right method, not merely by concentrating upon the right aspiration, or upon the words of others directed to yet others. It is, as it were, a trap laid for the ignoble element in you when a man, a book, a ceremonial, an organization, a method, appears directly or by recommendation to have something which is applicable to all, or attracts you strongly, though incorrectly. Syed Imam Ali Shah, from The Way of the Sufi. Confessions of John of Antioch. Reputed to have lived in the 13th century, Yahya, or John of Antioch, lived, worked and travelled in Syria, Palestine, Egypt and India. He may also have visited Central Asia. Though well known in oral tradition for his sayings, very few written records of his life survive. They have never been collected. Quite early in my youth, I noticed, provoked by what I do not know, that the beliefs and the loves and hatreds of people seemed to originate with the teachings of their parents and the community to which they belonged. The Mandeans, for instance, hated the Christians, although they knew little about them and did not want to increase their knowledge. And the Christians believed preposterous things about the Muslims, in spite of living amongst them and having a daily refutation of their prejudices, which they were unprepared to accept. Again, philosophers debated doctrines and arrived at answers which were profoundly affected by the quantity and nature of the knowledge with which they started their exercises and their prejudgments about the world, life, and people. I was for these reasons attracted to the people of the Sufi thought, although aware that I was myself greatly affected by changes in mood, in speculation, which was a mental habit with me, and by hope and fear. I doubted whether I could reach the understanding of humanity which these marvelous people exhibited. At first, because of these shortcomings, I found myself attracted by the assurance which came, as I saw, to many, by the repeated affirmation by teachers of all kinds that their own path, and theirs alone, led to salvation. I saw that it did indeed lead to a stilling of the searching and uncertainties of life. Again, because of the same reasons, I was at one time powerfully moved by the expedient devised by the Hindus, which consisted mainly in removing oneself, by an effort of the will, from the need to dwell upon human problems at all. At length I became a follower of the Sufis, because in my intercourse with them I discovered that they invariably helped protect me from the consequences of my selfishness, and seemed to help grow in me that part which could assent to the need to regard my fellow man as my brother, and my brother as myself. All religions preserved, it seemed to me, the indications of what should be attempted. None of them preserved the means by which a man could make his way from where he received the message up to the point where he practiced the message and became whole. I understood, long after I first started to follow the Sufi people, that entry into the body of the Sufis is possible in truth only after one has passed beyond the entry with the tongue and the entry with the heart alike. The Sufis, by accepting and passing on the capacity of guides in this way between where man finds himself to be and where he wants to be, made themselves knowing mediums fully sensitized so that a certain high power could move through them. They did this only at the risk of loss of personal repute, for men did not understand them, and by shunning the customary attachments of the world until they could truly resist them, and thereby often forswore the great dignities which they could otherwise have had. And they also took as their watchword the most courageous contract: we can help you to help yourself, and we must discharge our duty, setting aside whether we are understood by the generality of people, and our help to you is at whatever cost to our potential achievements in the superficial world. These are the men who love man, and whose love enables him to find the road to his own home. Entry into a Sufi circle. If you read, if you practice, you may qualify for a Sufi circle. If you only read, you will not. If you think you have had experiences upon which you can build, you may not qualify. Words alone do not communicate. There must be something prepared, of which the words are a hint. Practice alone does not perfect humanity. Man needs the contact of the truth, initially in a form which will help him. What is suitable and unexceptionable for one time and place is generally limited, unsuitable, or a hindrance in another time and place. This is true in the search and also in many fields of ordinary life. Hope and work so that you may be acceptable to a Sufi circle. Do not try to judge it or its members unless you are free from greed. Greed makes you believe things you would not normally believe. It makes you disbelieve things you should ordinarily believe. If you cannot overcome greed, exercise it only where you can see it working. Do not bring it into the circle of the initiates. Nazir al-Qazwini, The Solitary Remarks, from Wisdom of the Idiots. Source of being. Allow the source of being to maintain contact with you. Ignore the impressions and opinions of your customary self. If this self were of value in your search, it would have found realization for you. But all it can do is to depend upon others. Amin Surawadi, from Wisdom of the Idiots. The Travellers and the Grapes. There are three forms of culture: worldly culture, the mere acquisition of information; religious culture, following rules; elite culture, self-development. The Master Hujwiri, Revelation of the Veiled. A Sufi, the Sufis, cannot be defined by any single set of words or ideas. Rumi, one of the greatest mystical masters, tells us in a famous passage that the Sufi is drunk without wine, sated without food, distraught, foodless and sleepless, a king beneath a humble cloak, a treasure within a ruin, not of air and earth, not of fire and water, a sea without bounds. He has 100 moons and skies and suns. He is wise through universal truth, not a scholar from a book. Is he a man of religion? No, he is far, far more. He is beyond atheism and faith alike. What are merit and sin to him? He is hidden. Seek him. The Sufi, as we are told in these most famous words from the 13th century Divan of Shams of Tabriz, is hidden more deeply than the practitioner of any secret school. Yet individual Sufis are known in their thousands throughout the East. Settlements of Sufis are found in the lands of the Arabs, the Turks, the Persians, Afghans, Indians, Malays. The more the dogged searchers of the Western world have tried to dig out the secrets of the Sufi, the more hopelessly complex the task has seemed to be. Their work thus litters the fields of mysticism, Arabism, Orientalism, history, philosophy, and even general literature. The secret, in the Sufi phrase, protects itself. It is found only in the spirit and the practice of the work. No investigation into the reality of Sufism can be made entirely from the outside, because Sufism includes participation, training, and experience. In ordinary life, certain forms of understanding become possible because of experience. The human mind is what it is partly because of the impacts to which it has been exposed, and its ability to use those impacts. The interaction between impact and mind determines the quality of the personality. In Sufism, this normal physical and mental process is engaged in consciously. The result is felt to be more efficient, and wisdom, instead of being a matter of time, age, and accident, is regarded as inevitable. Sufis liken this process to the analogy between a savage who eats everything and a discriminating man who eats what is good for him, as well as tasty. Metaphysically minded people, and especially those who feel that they are comfortable in the domain of mysticism or inner perception, have no greater start on the generality of humanity where the acceptance of Sufism is concerned. Their subjectivity, especially where it is linked with a strong sense of personal uniqueness caught from other people, can in fact be a serious disability. Anyone who says, "It is all so indescribable, but I just feel what you mean," is unlikely to be able to profit by Sufism. For Sufis are working, are carrying out an effort to awaken a certain field of consciousness by means of an approach which is specialized, not fortuitous. Sufism does not trade in airy-fairiness, mutual admiration, or lukewarm generalities. When the bite disappears, so too does the Sufic element from a situation. Sufism is not directed to a section of the community, for no such section exists, but to a certain faculty within individuals. Where this faculty is not activated, there is no Sufism. It contains hard as well as soft realities, discord as well as harmony, the sharp brightness of awakening as well as the gentle dark of a lulling to sleep. There are imitation Sufis who try to benefit from the prestige which attaches to the name. Some of them have written books, which only add to a general perplexity among outsiders. Much of the Sufic spirit may be transmitted in writing. However, if one accepts the fact that Sufism has to be experienced, it does not depend upon the impact only of artistic forms, but of life upon life. Sufism, in one definition, is human life. It is axiomatic that the attempt to become a Sufi through a desire for personal power will not succeed. Only the search for truth is valid, the desire for wisdom the motive. The method is assimilation, not study. I report a glimpse of Sufis in a circle, or halqa, the basic unit and the very heart of active Sufism. A group of seekers is attracted to a teaching master and attends his Thursday evening assembly. The first part of the proceedings is the less formal time when questions are asked and students received. On this occasion, a newcomer had just asked our teacher, the Aga, whether there was a basic urge toward mystical experience shared by all humanity. "We have a word," replied the Aga, "which sums all this up. It describes what we are doing, and it summarizes our way of thinking. Through it you will understand the very reason for our existence, and the reason why mankind is generally speaking at odds. The word is Angarozaminabstafil." And he explained it in a traditional Sufi story. 4 men, a Persian, a Turk, an Arab, and a Greek, were standing in a village street. They were travelling companions making for some distant place, but at this moment they were arguing over the spending of a single piece of money, which was all that they had among them. "I want to buy angur," said the Persian. "I want uzum," said the Turk. "I want inab," said the Arab. "No," said the Greek, "we should buy stafil." Another traveller passing, a linguist, said, "Give the coin to me. I undertake to satisfy the desires of all of you." At first they would not trust him. Ultimately they let him have the coin. He went to the shop of a fruit seller and bought 4 small bunches of grapes. "This is my angur," said the Persian. "But this is what I call uzum," said the Turk. "You have bought me inab," said the Arab. "No," said the Greek, "this in my language is stafil." The grapes were shared out among them, and each realized that the disharmony had been due to his faulty understanding of the language of the others. "The travellers," said the Aga, "are the ordinary people of the world. The linguist is the Sufi. People know that they want something because there is an inner need existing in them. They may give it different names, but it is the same thing. Those who call it religion have different names for it, and even different ideas as to what it might be. Those who call it ambition try to find its scope in different ways. But it is only when a linguist appears, someone who knows what they really mean, that they can stop the struggling and get on with the eating of the grapes." The group of travellers which he had been describing, he continued, were more advanced than most, in that they actually had a positive idea of what they wanted, even though they could not communicate it. It is far more common for the individual to be at an earlier stage of aspiration than he thinks. He wants something but does not know what it is, though he may think that he knows. The Sufic way of thinking is particularly appropriate in a world of mass communication, when every effort is directed toward making people believe that they want or need certain things, that they should believe certain things, that they should, as a consequence, do certain things that their manipulators want them to do. The Sufi speaks of wine, the product of the grape, and its secret potential as his means of attaining inebriation. The grape is seen as the raw form of the wine. Grapes, then, mean ordinary religion, while wine is the real essence of the fruit. The travellers are therefore seen to be four ordinary people differing in religion. The Sufi shows them that the basis of their religions is in fact the same. He does not, however, offer them wine, the essence, which is the inner doctrine waiting to be produced and used in mysticism, a field far more developed than mere organized religion. That is a further stage. But the Sufi's role as a servant of humanity is brought out by the fact that, although he is operating on a higher level, he helps the formal religionist as far as he can, by showing him the fundamental identity of religious faith. He might, of course, have gone on to a discussion of the merits of wine, but what the travellers wanted was grapes, and grapes they were given. When the wrangling over smaller issues subsides, according to the Sufi, the greater teaching may be imparted. Meanwhile, some sort of primary lesson has been given. The basic urge toward mysticism is never, in the unaltered man, clear enough to be recognized for what it is. Rumi, in his version of this story, in the Mathnavi Book 2, alludes to the Sufi training system when he says that the grapes, pressed together, produce one juice, the wine of Sufism. The Sufis often start from a non-religious viewpoint. Words cannot be used in referring to religious truth except as analogy, Hakim Sanai, The Walled Garden of Truth. The answer, they say, is within the mind of mankind. It has to be liberated, so that by self-knowledge the intuition becomes the guide to human fulfillment. The other way, the way of training, suppresses and stills the intuition. Humanity is turned into a conditioned animal by non-Sufi systems, while being told that it is free and creative, has a choice of thought and action. The Sufi is an individual who believes that by practicing alternately detachment and identification with life, he becomes free. He is a mystic because he believes that he can become attuned to the purpose of all life. He is a practical man because he believes that this process must take place within normal society. And he must serve humanity because he is a part of it. In order to succeed in this endeavor, he must follow the methods which have been devised by earlier masters, methods for slipping through the complex of training which makes most people prisoners of their environment and of the effect of their experiences. The exercises of the Sufis have been developed through the interaction of two things, intuition and the changing aspects of human life. Different methods will suggest themselves intuitively in different societies and at various times. This is not inconsistent, because real intuition is itself always consistent. The Sufi life can be lived at any time, in any place. It does not require withdrawal from the world, or organized movements, or dogma. It is coterminous with the experience of humanity. It cannot, therefore, accurately be termed an Eastern system. It has profoundly influenced both the East and the very bases of the Western civilization in which many of us live, the mixture of Christian, Jewish, Muslim, and Near Eastern or Mediterranean heritage, commonly called Western. Mankind, according to the Sufis, is infinitely perfectible. The perfection comes about through attunement with the whole of existence. Physical and spiritual life meet, but only when there is a complete balance between them. Systems which teach withdrawal from the world, are regarded as unbalanced. This audio is made available by the Idries Shah Foundation and is copyright 2019. All rights reserved.